Hey everybody, today we want to have a look at this situation that's taking place in the metaverse. And if you don't know what that is, I'll quickly explain that. And we had some headlines last week where Facebook was changing its name. By the way, we did make a video last week where I discussed potentially more upside for Facebook, potentially fresh all-time highs even at some point this year. So maybe have a look at that. You can go check out that video. What I want to talk about is just quickly before we look at a couple of ways at which one can play this theme. I want to quickly describe for people what that is. And essentially, it's actually not that easy to describe because there's different definitions for people out there. But the metaverse basically is basically, if you want to call it virtual reality in it. And it brings about opportunities that are really beyond most people's comprehension or really anyone's comprehension. From a financial perspective, we're likely, in my opinion, for this to mean new GDP, unexplored GDP that we've never seen before. As we morph from the real world into the virtual world and right back out to it in a different, there's really unlimited. So basically Facebook, and I know I have the chart of Facebook on here, announced that, and the stock so far is reacting well. What I wanted to go through is give you just a couple of tickers that I think are well positioned for this. And one of them I've talked about actually many times before, at least several times before. It's a company called Roblox. This is, if you have young kids that play video games, you probably know what this is. I've got some annotations on here to make it simpler. It's a company that essentially, it's a video gaming company, but they're really involved heavily in the metaverse. Like you can create your own virtual world in that, and kids do, and there's kids making a ton of money every year, excuse me, building virtual worlds. It's amazing. They even have their own currency called Roblox. It really is an amazing situation. I think this is a more volatile way to play this idea, this theme, because it's an individual stock. It's got idiosyncratic risk attached to it, meaning an individual story. But unless they really screw up, I find it hard to imagine that this stock wouldn't be able to significantly move to the upside over time, and that's probably more of a multi-year call. But quite frankly, even in the short term, over the next 3 to 5, 6 months, I suspect if the metaverse theme gathers more steam from investors, I would expect that this stock would have plenty of upside. They do have earnings coming up, so just be aware of that. So that's an individual stock that one can look at. I just want to reiterate that one, how to play this theme. Luckily, for those of you guys that don't want to take an idiosyncratic risk, there's also an ETF, and there's probably several of them out there. Just the one that I'm focusing on is called Meta. And I'm going to quickly actually, in the meantime, bring something else over here so we can have a look at this together. But Meta is an ETF that holds a bunch of these companies, including Roblox, by the way, that are very much involved in this metaverse theme. So if this is something you're interested in, we are very interested, and we think it's one of the more transformational stories out there. Allocating some money to Meta, the ETF, for, again, this is more of a longer term allocation, and think at least 6 months, probably more like multiple years. That's interesting. But again, I do think there's potentially more upside in the near term from a trading perspective as well. If you're curious what Meta looks like in terms of its holding, and what you'll find is the holdings. So you can see it's not an equally weighted ETF, meaning some things are more heavily weighted than others. Nvidia, almost 8%. Roblox, we just talked about that one, right? That's almost 7% that you have. Then you have Meta Platforms. I guess that's Facebook's new name, Microsoft, Snapchat, and so on and so forth, and even Amazon's in there. So it's a fairly diversified ETF, but again, kind of giving you exposure to that metaverse theme, technological revolution, if you will. Hope it makes sense, folks, and hope it helps. And we'll see you again soon.